find resistance. My name is Frances. I'm so happy that you're here. And so I'm a therapy coach. I coach women to shift their mindset, and that helps them to elevate their thinking so that they can rise and thrive. And one of the questions that I get a lot from my clients is, I can't stop thinking or ruminating about things. They're overthinkers. And so I wanted to create a video about that today. And so I want to ask you, are you an overthinker? Do you find yourself constantly replaying things in your head, wondering what went right, what went wrong, what will happen next, and so forth? Or do you find yourself just thinking nonstop about things that happened a long, long time ago? Well, then I got you covered. Again, I'm going to answer this number one question that I get from my clients. And in our sessions, sometimes we start here with this overthinking. But for us to go any further, we have to create space for new ways of thinking, feeling, and healing. It's hard to do that if your thoughts are constantly filled with noise. So I'd like to share with you something very simple that helps a lot of my clients get started in interrupting the loop that goes inside of their heads. Now, with everything that I share with y'all, remember, it all takes practice. If you want things to be different, you have to do something different. So we're going to cover how overthinking turns into rumination, and then answer the question, why do we do it and when do we do it? Also, how does it impact our lives? And I just want you to know that there's hope, and you can stop overthinking or learn ways to manage it in a way that doesn't disrupt your life. So briefly, overthinking is a form of what we like to call in the therapy world a cognitive distortion. And there's quite a few of them. And I'm not going to go through all of them here. These are things I usually cover in my coaching program. I mean, you could also look them up, but you can go ahead and download the free worksheet that goes along with this video, and you'll receive the cognitive distortions sheet so that you can figure out what kind of overthinking do you find yourself doing. So like I said earlier, my clients overthink about lots of different things, like interactions that have them questioning their self-worth, that highlights their insecurities. It creates so much anxiety that they get emotionally and physically stuck in those mind loops, right? While never taking any form of action. And so they find themselves suppressing a lot of that stuff, kind of like smiling on the outside while they silently battle very, very intense emotions and are consistently overwhelmed. I had a client of mine, and I did this activity with him, the one that I'm going to take you all through. And within 2 weeks, he reduced a lot of his anxieties. Then within 2 months of us working together, he felt more confident. He didn't overthink as much. And when he did, he just simply used the tools that we discussed, that he practiced. And it literally blew my mind, not because it worked. I knew that it would work, but just because he committed to doing something different than what he was doing originally. And then he saw results fairly quickly, which also just encouraged him to keep going. And I bet you're thinking, there's no possible way that I can stop myself from overthinking. It's going to be with me forever. I've always done it this way, but let me tell you, I've seen it. I've done it, and so can you. If there's a solution out there, wouldn't you want to experiment with it? Get curious about it. Then do your best to implement it. Sometimes we often don't believe enough in ourselves to see things through, but you're watching this. So that means that you do. So let's get down to business. Back in the day when I would start overthinking, it would just be like a snowball. It first starts like a little pebble, like a tiny thought, right? And then it rolls and it rolls. And as it rolls and it gets bigger, it picks up other thoughts and other thoughts, kind of like a snowball. As a snowball rolls down the hill, it picks up everything along the way. So your one thought turns into another thought. The next thing you know, you have a full-fledged movie playing in your head. I want to know, is that you? What does it mean to ruminate and overthink situations? Rumination is a cognitive process in which you obsess over the same thoughts again and again. Rumination is what happens when you can't get your mind to stop thinking about something, even though it's not productive to do so. Rumination occurs when you spend time, thinking about something that isn't happening or hasn't happened yet, which means it has no clear outcome. It often causes a lot of overwhelming anxiety and other mental health stuff if you continue to ruminate on the same thing over and over again. Rumination is a core part of our everyday process. Sometimes situations call for a closer and just a much deeper look. It's not a sign of weakness or like a lack of intelligence. And it doesn't necessarily imply like there's any sort of, mental illness or anything like that. But it can literally ruin your life by taking up valuable brain space and distracting you from the things that truly matter. So when you do this long enough, it can lead to negative emotions and thoughts and ultimately destructive behaviors. Again, this is what therapists call dwelling on unproductive thoughts. And it can be a major issue for anyone, whether they're, feeling depressed or anxious or not. The thing about rumination and overthinking is they become habits, albeit harmful habits. Kind of like when you repeat a question in your head and you end up thinking more about that question than actually solving it. But what makes you ruminate? Many factors contribute to rumination. It could be struggling with perfectionism. It comes along with needing to make sure things are perfect. The emotions it brings up, such as like fear of failure, anxiety, about health or finances, or simply an inability to let go of something that has been bothering you for a long time. Of course, there are times, again, when rumination serves as a valuable purpose, keeping yourself safe from harm, if you're like thinking about a situation, for example, or ensuring you make the right decisions in a stressful situation. But it could just be like a mundane thought that makes you wonder whether or not to do something, to an intense worry about your life or one of your loved ones. So the overthinking turns into rumination. Rumination occurs when you let those thoughts spin in your head over and over again, obsessing over them so much that they become literally unbearable. And sometimes rumination is caused by an issue that you have to deal with, but other times it's just a habit of thinking negatively. All right. So I think we get it. You're stuck in a rumination. You're thinking about something and then you're thinking about that. And then you're thinking about that and so on. And then you get caught up in these loops and it's hard to stop. Fortunately, these thoughts don't have to control your life. Like the rumination, you can interrupt it and change it. I'm going to show you a few things, but before I do, I want to say one last thing. Ruminating can also be wanting to control the outcome of something and wanting something to be different. Remember, you overthinking about stuff usually doesn't solve them anyway, right? So you're going to learn to identify ruminating thoughts. Sometimes you don't realize you're overthinking until you've literally exhausted yourself. So wouldn't it be great to be able to stop it before it gets to that point? And then I'm going to show you how to interrupt the loop. So the first thing that you want to do, of course, is identify your thoughts. By being aware of your thoughts, you begin the process of moving yourself away from being on autopilot. So try not to dismiss negative thoughts as wrong thinking. Instead of notice them in the moment. And it seems like it's counterproductive because you're like already thinking. So why would I want to think more about my thoughts? But just hang in there with it. So when you begin to ruminate and you're in a ruminative state, try to bring yourself back to the present. And so you do this in small bits. 10 or 15 minutes at a time, less if 10 or 15 minutes feels a bit overwhelming, but until it becomes second nature. And you can do this by using a journal to brain dump, that definitely helps because you really want to get those thoughts out of your mind and onto something else. For some folks, it can be meditation, just being just sitting and being calm. And if you're not very comfortable with meditation, or if meditation isn't appropriate because it's just trauma history, but, just being able to sit and pause for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute can really also help. The thing is, overthinking hijacks our minds and our emotions. So instead of just sitting and thinking, getting it out of your mind and externalizing it through the brain dump, like I mentioned, will help very, very much. So here's another strategic way to use your journal by answering 3 questions. So, once you kind of get used to brain dumping, because we like to just hold it all in. Once you try to get used to flush it out of your mind, then you can move to this process. So thoughts are running dialogues in our heads, and we don't even question them, right? They just pop up and we just assume they're true and we just go with it. We don't even say, hey, let me just question that real quick. We just keep going without wondering if that thought is true or not. Our thoughts determine how we feel, how we think, and ultimately how we behave. So we better make sure that thought is actually valid. So let's level up that journal, shall we? What I want you to do is write down the ruminating thought or thoughts that you're having. And we're going to do Socratic questioning. Socratic questions are limitless, but for the purpose of this exercise, we're just going to focus on a few. If you're not familiar with Socratic questioning, it's a dialectical method of inquiry and debate by means of a carefully constructed series of leading questions to arrive at a logical response, and to stimulate rational thinking. So in other words, you ask some open-ended questions to reach responses that are logical and rational versus emotional. First question to write down. You have the thought, right, at the top of the paper or wherever you decide to put it in your journal. And then you can even kind of like do like a mind map. So the first question is, what is the evidence that goes against this thought? And sometimes when we actually get the answers, we may not like the answers, but the answers kind of help us remove the emotions out of the situation so that we could think logically. Because remember, overthinking is about hijacking your emotions. So maybe you've been overthinking that your partner is going to break up with you. Maybe you've had a series of events that led you to this feeling and to this thought. So let's run it through the Socratic questioning. What is the evidence for this thought? So maybe, like I said, you've had a couple of arguments and you're feeling a little bit like shaky, but your partner has never actually come out to you and say, hey, I want to break up with you, right? And so you need to write down all of the evidence for this thought. And it could be true or not true. Just write them all down for now. And then you want to write what goes against it. And just like I said, your partner did not actually have the conversation to break up with you. So that actually goes against your original thought. And then the question number 2, am I basing this thought on facts or feelings? I feel like my partner is going to break up with me. You then write down, is this more of a feeling or a fact? Because the only factual thing is if you actually had a direct conversation with your partner and they said that they wanted to break up with you. But if you're still in an ongoing relationship with your partner, then the original thought that you had about your partner breaking up with you actually isn't true. It's more about the feeling, right? And then number 3, am I having this thought out of habit, or again, do facts support it? Overthinking can become a habit, and this encourages you to kind of look at old patterns as well. Like, is this something that you kind of regularly do in previous relationships? Have you been thinking about it since day 1? And then you're on like year 10 and you're still thinking about it. So write down whether or not this is a habitual thing, or again, do facts still support it? And if you keep coming back to the same to the same statement that I mentioned, that your partner did not actually have a conversation with you about breaking up, then that is your answer, right? You're in the moment overthinking about this process, and you're allowing your feelings to drive the overthinking process. So the next question, this is my favorite question. Did someone pass this thought or belief to me? If so, are they a reliable source? So ask yourself, where did you originally get this idea that someone is just going to leave you without actually having this conversation? And this gets a bit deeper when you talk about like attachment styles and inner child healing and childhood trauma and all that other stuff. But usually if we're having concerns about whether a partner is going to leave us, maybe there's some abandonment stuff going on there. And maybe you witnessed that in your childhood. Maybe you heard somebody say they always going to leave, that whole old saying, like, let's do traditional gender norms. But like, if a woman can't cook, the man's going to leave, that kind of thing. Like, where did you hear that is something that people do in relationships? And then challenge that thought. But I hope you see where I'm going here. The whole point of Socratic questioning is to think rationally and to not allow your emotions to run away with you in the process. There's a time and place for the emotions, right? But if you want to stop ruminating, overthinking, you have to think logically. So another question I would always ask my client, because safety was a big thing for him. Are you safe right now? In this moment, does your partner enjoy being with you in this moment? Look for evidence that shows that your partner actually wants to be in this relationship. And if you go through this process and you find other answers, again, you never know what you're going to discover when you do Socratic questioning sometimes, but you may find other answers. You'll be like, oh, wow, okay, maybe this is something for me to be curious about, right? Investigate and be curious. So you can get the complete checklist. I'm also going to leave not only the cognitive distortions sheet, so you could just take a look to see what kind of thinking patterns that you may have that get in the way of you connecting with others, or get in the way of you feeling a certain way that ultimately negatively impacts your behaviors. But these questions alone are very powerful and will interrupt the loop that's going on in your head. And if you do it long enough, you can literally just like do it in your head, for a lack of better phrase, but get in the habit of like checking your thoughts. And what I mean by that is to question and challenge them. Remember how I say, over time, we learn to ask better questions so we can receive better answers to interrupt the loop. And this is one of them. So here's the thing. Our emotions can be sometimes so intense that it whisks us away, and we invent stories by filling in the gaps to the stories without real confirmation. And we don't have any facts. And sometimes without having a conversation with the person or people directly involved, we make assumptions and then we lead with those assumptions. So in the download, you'll also find a common example. So you'll know how to fill out the template. In some experiences, again, they feel very real. And so the clear distinction is to keep in mind if this is a present day issue or a past day or a future day, and that will help to ground you. Now, the last thing that I had my client do, because these ruminating thoughts do affect our bodies in multiple ways. So it's important to really get centered in your body. That's why things like deep breathing and movement help to shake the nerves that you might be experiencing or any other intense emotion. So do something that positively distracts you away from ruminating. It doesn't mean that you're suppressing the thoughts. It's all about bringing yourself back to the present and then doing some body movements to shake those nerves. So one thing I would tell him, and I tell this to my clients too, and it really like immediately jerks you out of the situation. And so what I want you to do is just take a moment and place your hand on your heart, both hands. Some people do one hand, but I feel like both hands help anchor. Place both hands on your heart area, right in the center. And stabilize your breathing with deep breaths. You want to really feel your chest move up and down. And if you can, take the deepest breath that you've ever taken and fill your lungs up with lots of air. And then exhale slowly, sometimes doing an ah sound like that. And I want you to say the following things to yourself. Preferably if you can say it out loud is better, just to be able to hear the vibrations coming from your throat. At this moment, I am safe. If you're worried about family members, then say, everyone that I know right now, today, is safe. And then just keep breathing and then slow it down. Then take a moment to think about a place that makes you feel safe, happy, and at ease. And if you didn't have a moment like that, then think about a place that you know would make you feel at ease, or that you can envision ease. And take a moment to really bring yourself to that place and bring up those feelings as much as you can and let it soak in. And just sit with that. And then pause. And then, when you're done, you can write in your journal how that felt for you. And the more you do that, I guarantee you're going to reduce the overthinking, but you just need to practice it. You just need to do something different other than what it is that you're currently doing. All right. Well, I hope this video was helpful. Again, like, subscribe, and share. And once again, download the worksheet in the description below, and then let me know what you do to interrupt the looping of overthinking, and let me know if you're willing and open to trying this as well. And I will see you next time.